Colts training camp is in the books for the 2025 campaign. So how did the joint practice with Green Bay turn out today? What do we want to see in the second preseason tilt this Saturday? And how do you, the fans, feel about the team after this Thursday practice? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com. My name is Drake Wally, co-deputy editor for the site and co-host of this show, joined by none other than Noah Gebert, analyst for the site and fellow co-host of this podcast. Noah, we got some things to talk about today because not only was this the final training camp practice for Indianapolis this year, it's also the last joint practice they're going to have, and it's ahead of just I can't believe I'm saying this, but a pretty big preseason game, on Saturday. So how you doing, man? What did you think? We're going to dive into it, but what did you think about the joint practice? And, how do you feel ahead of Saturday's game about this team?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more bad news, I think, that we've heard about joint practices today than we got good news, unfortunately. Honestly, the performances don't matter too much. I mean, they do, right? But I think the number one priority right now as we close out training camp with the Indianapolis Colts is making sure people stay healthy. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they stayed 100% healthy, but hopefully some of these injuries that cropped up during today's practice turn out to be minor ones. But yeah, training camp was a long one, and honestly don't know that we learned much that we didn't already know, mainly about the quarterbacks, I'd say. But I think around the rest of the team, we, other than the injuries making things kind of be shaped a little bit differently, I'm not sure there were a ton of huge developments throughout training camp, but still got these next two preseason games to go to figure some things out and get things ironed out before the regular season kicks off.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's not just about the quarterbacks here. There's, especially given all the injuries that have happened, which there's even more that we have to report. Yeah. It's critical to see who's going to be able to step up into that role because with some of these injuries, especially with guys like Juju, guys like Jalen in the cornerback room, they still haven't even disclosed how long they're out for. Yeah. So it could be pretty interesting. But as everybody kind of jumps into the chat here, what we will do is we'll start off actually talking about a couple of these updates. So obviously, Noah, like I just mentioned, Juju, Brents, Jalen Jones, they're injured with hamstrings. Then you got Justin Wally now, who's out for the year with an ACL tear. Yep. And Kenny Moore, had something happen with his knee. They said that right now it doesn't seem to be, anything serious, but that's also a very ambiguous update, and then there's other injuries too. So it's like
quite a few that we're going over. And Alec Pierce didn't practice today. Danny Pinter's still not practicing. Quiddy Pay
hasn't been practicing.
Yeah, and then I think the two big ones that came out of today that hopefully don't seem that major. There wasn't a ton of spectacle when those happened on the field. But Josh Downs exiting with a hamstring injury. I can confirm that after practice. Hopefully that's not a big deal. Our own Jake Arthur was there, not really noticing any limping or favoring of any leg while he was walking off the field under his own power. So hopefully that ends up not being a big deal. But yeah, just the state that the injuries are in right now, just don't even worry about playing him on Saturday or really going into the next preseason game. Just make sure he's good to go for week one. And then another name was Samson Ebukam, came off the field today with a back injury, which is someone who's just coming off of that Achilles tear, just getting back into action. So you hate to see another injury pop up. You don't know if that's because maybe he's favoring one leg over the other because of the Achilles injury and he's still a little bit getting up to full speed there. But you hate to see a guy who's already just coming off of a serious injury that ended his last season come down with something. Hopefully that's something minor that they can also get worked out before the regular season gets going.
Yeah. And, Greg here in the chat says, let's not overreact. That's a fair assessment because, I mean, it's never good when you have, Downs has had issues with those types of injuries. That's the thing. But the thing is, they also aren't going to take any chances during training camp. You don't need to throw a guy out there for the preseason, especially if he's a star or he's a guy that's got a prominent role. But yeah, starting with Downs, man, I mean, that's a real big hiccup because we've talked over and over on this show about the potential that he brings to this offense and how he might be the number one wide receiver. Yep. Then you're factoring in Pierce. He's dealing with something with his groin, which when you're an explosive wideout like that, that's a bolt of lightning with your speed, and you sky high for 50-50 balls, a groin injury. I mean, any player in the NFL, that sucks. especially a guy who's constantly moving his feet at a high pace. I mean, that could really set you back. Tell me a little bit about, how do you feel about the depth pieces? Because right now, if those guys were to be out for any amount of time, it's pretty much Anthony Gould is going to fill in as your backup slot. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ashton Dulin, given the way that he's a gunner, he would probably fill in as kind of that vertical threat. Are you confident? Let's just say that those two are out for an amount of time. Are you confident in Dulin and Gould? I mean, they've shown out pretty well in training camp this year.
Yeah. You hope it's nothing serious, but obviously some of those names that you're getting a look at are guys like A.D. Mitchell, one who we'll hit on later. Anthony Gould's been having a really strong camp, has been impressing people, where I think he's kind of slot himself into that backup slot, where at times last year, when you had Josh Downs go down, you were trying to shoehorn A.D. Mitchell into that slot space just to get him on the field. When really, I think if you're seeing Josh Downs miss any amount of time or any extended amount of time, I think you'll see a lot of action from Anthony Gould, really getting his fair shake at that slot spot, if that were to be the case. And then, Ashton Dulin, a guy who the Colts obviously love and has a ton of special teams ability, and that's his value. I mean, that's his ability on special teams is enough to get him a roster spot anyway. But when you add in the things that he can do as a receiver and maybe throw some extra playmaking in there, those deep passes that he's able to catch, that one against Daniel Jones last week against the Ravens is one that sticks out. It's just one that was super recent. But obviously we're probably not going to see a ton of Michael Pittman in this preseason game. Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, I think, are going to be out. So we're going to get a pretty extended look at A.D. Mitchell and Anthony Gould and Ashton Dulin kind of in these, I guess, with the ones as much as they can be with the ones. I'm not sure how many of the starters the Packers defense is going to be throwing out there. I'm not sure how long the actual Colts first team offensive line is going to be out there, but they're going to get some extended looks, and we're going to really figure out if the depth at wide receiver is enough. And I think the Colts feel pretty strongly that the guys they do have as depth in that room are going to be enough to take them over these small instances where we're going to be missing Alec Pierce or Josh Downs for any amount of time.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, the Colts did also lose, DJ Montgomery, who's a depth wide receiver. They lost him to injured reserve. So, I mean, let's just hypothetically say Pierce, Downs, they're out for the first just 2 weeks of the season. You're looking at guys like we mentioned, guys like Gould, guys like Dulin, guys like Mitchell getting a bump up in their reps. Yeah. But then after that, man, get ready for this. I mean, they're not going to keep all these guys. DJ Montgomery, he's on IR. You're talking about guys like Coleman Owen, all right, the illustrious Laquan Treadwell, which for some reason there are fans out there that are like, well, let's give him a shot.
Yeah, I think the Colts are some of his biggest fans out there. I mean, obviously, if you're sitting on a practice squad for as long as he's been with the Colts, you can't have a ton of fans throughout the NFL, at least not enough to pull him onto another roster. But yeah, you mentioned DJ Montgomery and Laquan Treadwell are these two practice squad receivers who have been just with the organization for a while, and the Colts seem to trust. So yeah, I imagine with DJ Montgomery going down, Laquan Treadwell is looking at one of those spots. And then, these other names you mentioned, Coleman Owens had a pretty good camp. Probably more of your slot guy, but he might be one of those guys up for that practice squad spot, along with Landon Parker, Blaine Taylor, Tyler Common, Aju, all these names that are just sitting there. They're just as depth pieces. So, I mean, some time over these next preseason games to really battle it out for those spots.
Yeah, and Patrick, your comment on why Pierce strained his groin, not even going to get into it, but that's freaking hilarious. So if anybody's curious, go check the chat. Patrick's got jokes right now. But yeah, this other one here, this one really, I mean, it's a different injury than what he missed the entire season last year with, but it still makes me sad because it's like, this is a guy that in 2023, when he was signed, I can't remember specifics, but I'm pretty sure it was a 3-year, $24 million deal. He was forthright and said, that's why I came to the Colts, is because they offered me the best contract. Yeah. But man, did he come in like a freaking meteorite, man. Led the team in sacks. That's Samson Ebukam with that back injury. There's so many question marks surrounding him, and he's kind of been, packed away because you've heard of these new shiny toys like Leatu Latu and JT Tuamoliau and, a guy that's established like Kwity Paye. People forget he's on the roster. Honestly, Noah, I think if he can replicate that 2023 season, man, it'd be really hard for Ebukam to not. I think Latu's going to break out.
Yeah.
But Ebicom is a hell of a football player. And so if this back injury is anything that's significant, I mean, that's a pretty big blow. And you're looking at JT Tuamoliau, guys like him and Tyquan Lewis, maybe even Isaiah Land getting a bump up in snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel a little bit fortunate in that these two injuries that you came out of today, whether they're serious or not, you at least feel good about the depth at both of these positions. So even if you do see Samson Ebukam missing an extended amount of time, you've got Latu and JTT, Tyquan Lewis, Kwity Paye, these guys in that room already that are going to be able to bolster that pass rush and really fill in while he's out, and it won't hurt your rotation too much. But yeah, like you mentioned, he had a great 2023 with the Colts when he came in as a free agent and led the team in sacks. And I think you want somebody like that on your roster who's going to be a designated pass rusher. He's going to be your guy that's going to be staying on the outside on third downs, not your guys like JTT and Tyquan Lewis that maybe are going to be bumping in as DTs in pass rush situations. But yeah, like these pure edge rushers, that's Latu and Samson Ebukam. And unless you're keeping a guy like Isaiah Land, Darrell and Chami, these other guys on the roster who maybe fill that role. I mean, he's kind of with Latu, he's kind of it. So yeah, you want to see him come back and really rough after that Achilles injury that he missed the entire season on. See it come back. You're glad it's not a lower leg injury again that he's dealing with, and hopefully it's just a back issue that they can get worked out over these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, to put a bow on Ebukam here, he had 9.5 sacks in 2023. Absolutely tore it up for the Colts. I think he was second in pressures behind only DeForest Buckner, which is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. So that is a guy that people have kind of forgotten about. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, if Samson Ebukam returns and he's fully healthy, he is a great football player. And I really would love to see him be able to be a part of that rotation with Paye and Latu and Tuamoliau and the NASCAR package with Lewis. So there's one more I wanted to mention because I saw James Boyd of the Athletics update here.
Okay.
Jalen Carlies was in a boot. He's in a boot. Right ankle. He's in a boot. I'm not laughing at the guy, but what an absolutely terrible position to be in if you're Jalen Carlies, because not only have you not shown out at camp, when I was there both times, I'm around, Nate Atkins, Joel Erickson from Indy Star. You got Stephen Holder. You got, Andrew and Jake from our channel, Jared and Sean, they're from our channel. There's so many news people and analysts and everything, local people and everything. Not one of them was saying Jalen Carlies' name.
Yeah.
Not one of them was putting any tweet or post or whatever the hell you want to call it nowadays with X. None of them were saying anything about the guy. But everyone was talking about Joe Bacci. Everyone's talking about Cam McGrone. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen to Jalen Carlies is he is just missing snaps. Yeah. And it looks like, I think you even mentioned it, that he's kind of like linebacker 4 right now.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how it's the order has kind of picked itself out to be linebacker 4, which, I mean, and the injury sucks, and it's coming at a bad time where it seemed like he was already kind of losing ground in this linebacker battle, and now he really doesn't have an opportunity to gain it back. I imagine if we see him walking around with a boot today at training camp, that likely means he's not playing on Saturday. So really, you've only got one other preseason game, and I think that's a stretch to be throwing him out there. But I mean, for the same reasons that we mentioned this offseason where we were a little bit hesitant about Jalen Carlies. He's super young, with former 5th-round pick, only his second year playing the position after making the switch from safety. All those reasons that you weren't 100% confident with him as the starting linebacker are also reasons where you're like, it's okay if he sits behind Cam McGrone and Joe Bacci and he can develop into the position a little bit more and then maybe grow a little bit and really get put out there. And at a time when he's kind of adapted to this defensive scheme, because that's another thing that's going up against him is second year in the position, and he's already dealing with his second defensive coordinator in the NFL. So, I mean, that's just a young guy who's going through a lot to make the adaptation to the NFL game from where he was at in college. So, obviously, we're not going to sit here and say there's no hope for him to come out and really be a good linebacker, because I think the Colts still see the great things that a lot of fans were seeing last year in terms of his ability and pass coverage. But yeah, I mean, when you have a guy, I think this is a blessing in disguise a little bit in terms of the Colts, where you have a guy like Joe Bacci that maybe nobody expected to come out and really impress, where you have the person that we had penciled in across from Zaire Franklin as the other starter not even really showing up on the depth chart right now, and you still feel okay about the linebacker position. I think that worked out really well for the Indianapolis Colts when you have Joe Bocci and Cam McGrone, maybe even as a depth piece that you feel good about. So, yeah, injury sucks. You want to see a young guy who's making that switch get all the reps he can, but you are in a position where it's okay. You don't have to rush him out onto the field. You have some guys who have kind of emerged and shown they're able to take on that role. So I feel okay about, obviously not okay about the injury, but okay about the situation that Carlisle is going to be in, where he can sit back and they don't have to push him out there earlier than he needs to be.
Yeah, and one more thing is we just kind of assumed, hey, like we were just all under the realm of thought that, well, Carlisle is going to start.
Yeah.
Nobody, I'll just be honest, I did not anticipate Joe Bocci coming in here and lighting the world on fire in training camp. Then he goes to the preseason game. What does he do? He basically does Jalen Carlisle's job as a coverage linebacker, and he's out there taking away passes, picking off passes. And then you've got Hunter Wohler, who is a safety linebacker hybrid. What the hell is he doing? He's taking away passes, so Jalen Carlisle's whole thing is coverage as a linebacker. And so if Joe Bocci's doing that and Cam McGrone is showing out and you got Hunter Wohler jumping in there at linebacker too and taking away passes, I mean, man, it sucks for Carlisle. We'll see if once he gets healthy, he can get the wheels turning, because unfortunately, as you're out and you got this competition going on, you got guys that were brought in from Lou Anarumo's scheme, and another guy like McGrone that's been with the team and hasn't gotten opportunities. They're all showing out. That's not good for your stock. So, but we'll kind of transition here. We've spent some time on these updates. This one is quite concerning. I also don't want to lose my marbles over one training camp joint practice. But even Stephen A. Holder said, quote, "The Colts' first and second team offensive lines were getting whipped by the Packers' defensive front.
Yeah.
It's early, but man, this ain't good." So we have to jump into this. If you check everybody that was at training camp, not one of them is praising the offensive line. Everyone's saying it was concerning to watch how badly they got their asses kicked. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's kind of like, hey, it's our second joint practice? We haven't even gotten through the second game of a 3-game preseason. Is this something to worry about? Or is it like, hey, it's just a joint practice?
Yeah, well, we'll start. First and second team was both dominated. I think a lot of Colts fans expect the second team offensive line to get dominated. Just kind of what you've seen lately out of Blake Freeland. Jalen Travis probably isn't ready to get in there in a full-time role.
That's fair.
Danny Pinter's not practicing, so your second team center is Wesley French, and then it's guys like Josh Sills, Dalton Tucker in there. So your second team offensive line, I mean, we're kind of worried about the depth at tackle, I think, but we kind of knew that already, so that wasn't really anything that I was surprised about hearing about the second team offensive line getting dismantled. But you do worry about the first team.
Yes.
Bernard Ryman, I don't think you're thinking is a long-term issue, but got beat a couple of times by Lucas Van Ness today. Braden Smith getting beat by Rashawn Gary on the other side. Rashawn Gary's a hell of a player, so you would kind of expect that as well. Yeah. But you're not really worried about the tackles, but I think and Quentin Nelson, I didn't really hear about much about him getting beat, but and you're definitely not worried about him. But then you got to turn your eyes to the sophomores that are taking over those starting jobs from really highly paid and highly touted former linemen for the Colts that moved elsewhere. So you've got Tanner Bordolini and Matt Gonsalves really both struggling in there on the interior in practice. And that's something that should be on the Colts radar and should have been since the offseason began, when those two were slated to slide into those starting roles. So it's really worth keeping an eye on. I think we've seen good and bad from both of them throughout training camp, and good and bad from both of them in that first preseason game. You obviously don't want to see that. From what I was hearing at training camp today, it was a lot of miscommunication that was going on the interior, allowing a couple blitzes up the A gaps to come through clean, which is going to be on the quarterback calling protections. It's going to be on the center identifying protections. And then it's going to be that communication between the center and the two guards beside him to really facilitate picking up that blitz. So yeah, if you've got communication issues stemming from your center and extending into your guard play, I think that's going to become an issue. So you really want Tanner Bordolini to clean that up and Matt Gonsalves to clean that up on the inside as well. It's just definitely something we're going to be watching.
Yeah. And the thing is, the Colts have always just preached about the trenches. Ballard is literally obsessed with it. And You just paid. I mean, this is just one training camp practice. So again, I can't stress everybody. I know that that everyone's like, doesn't look good, and even for Stephen Holder to be like, this ain't good. It's like, well, Stephen, it's one training camp practice. I mean, esteemed guy, works for ESPN, but a little bit of an overreaction. So it's just one practice. But you did just pay Ryman 4-year, $100 million deal with $60 million guaranteed. You did just restructure Braden Smith's contract. Quentin Nelson is making an absolute crap ton. And so those three guys are commanding a good chunk of your change and your cap space, especially Ryman. And so, like you said, the attention does need to turn to guys like Bortolini. It does need to turn to guys like Gonsalves, because let's just be honest, defensive coordinators are going to attack those two.
Yeah.
They're going to do whatever they can to overwhelm them, send a blitzer behind a defensive tackle to make sure that, to see if they can actually deal with that. God forbid if they lose their gap and a blitz is coming, well, your quarterback might get his head taken off. So there's a lot of pressure on those two.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say, if we're talking from a practice standpoint, it's one thing to get your butt kicked. It's another to just not show really any positive outlook during a practice. So I personally think it's too soon to, raise the alarms. But if we're talking, if you look on Saturday's preseason game and guys are getting whipped, that might be another thing. But like you mentioned, there's one more thing I got to say is Blake Freeland. Okay. This is just not to knock the guy. He's not a good tackle. Okay. He's not a very good tackle. Jalen Travis is a rookie. Dalton Tucker, he can play, but it's kind of like a toss up, so some of these depth guys are not going to go out there and shine much.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want them to get beat, because the Packers weren't exactly using Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness against, Blake Freeland and Jalen Travis. So.
Yeah, it's just something worth watching, where second team we've known has been trouble. 3 out of the 5 you feel good about, despite what happened in training or in just joint practice today. But yeah, you're really keeping your eyes on Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. If things go downhill like throughout the season and they're proving they're not up to it, you really don't have any option to switch. I guess Danny Pinter is your next man up at literally both of those spots. If you're coming in, and he's not healthy right now. So if Tanner Bortolini's struggling, then you can turn to Danny Pinter. If Matt Gonsalves ends up struggling throughout the season, Danny Pinter's really the only guy you're turning to man that guard spot, because I don't think they want to turn to Dalton Tucker again like they did last year, and then had to frantically go out and sign a guy like Mark Lewinsky. So yeah, and we've seen the Danny Pinter experiment at guard before, and we didn't like what we saw then. So yeah, you really hope that Matt Gonsalves specifically that he works out there at that guard spot, because you really don't have an alternative at this point.
Yeah, I mean, hey, before we kind of move on here, we got to get to a couple super chats. Number one, Paul Wilson, you're a legend. Thank you so much for the super chat. Be honest, how bad did we get owned in practice? I'm struggling to see much hope for this 2025 season. Walk me off the ledge, please. Hey, you stop walking toward the edge of that ledge, Paul. It wasn't good. Okay, offense, defense. I mean, let's just say the defense looked better than the offense did.
Yeah.
Not any reason to freak out. I mean, they've played nothing but themselves over and over and over again. And then you get one joint practice with the Ravens, and then you get a second joint practice against a completely different team. Sometimes it takes multiple chances. Like, you got to kind of get a rhythm going.
Yeah.
And, some of these guys are new to all this. And so, people just get this, this understanding in their head that, like, hey, these are pros and they need to do great work all the time. Well, just like anybody else in their day job, you can have a bad day.
Yeah.
You can just look bad, feel bad, lose rhythm, lose confidence. These guys are human beings. But I don't think it's, tell me what you think, Noah. Again, it's one day, one practice that was like, 2 hours long,
Yeah, it is one day. The offense you're worried about just because of the quarterback position, and they struggled again today.
That's a big one, yeah.
But that's not because they got owned today. I mean, you've been worried about that since we came into camp. So That's not right. Yeah, and then the defensive side of the
Exactly.
ball, like they didn't get on. I think the defensive side of the ball came out on top, which they should have against the Malik Willis led Green Bay Packers offense, who was out most of their starting receivers. So yeah, you're hoping that the defense came out on top, and they did. So I don't think you're too worried about that. I think there's just the area that you're coming back to. Yeah, like we mentioned, those interior offensive linemen that are kind of new to the role. And then quarterback. I mean, we've talked about that every episode since this offseason started. That's the biggest conversation we're going to have, and really this season's going to come and go with however the quarterback position shakes out and how they're performing, whoever ends up winning that job. So yeah, I don't think we learned anything new this training camp. Just got a couple of extra things that we're going to be looking out for the next 2 games.
Yeah, and don't get too lost in the training camp practices and stuff. I mean, who the heck knows what could happen, but I appreciate the super chat, Paul. But yeah, don't worry don't look too far into it. Now, hey, they look terrible on Saturday. Turn around and look terrible against the Bengals, then you might start getting a little bit concerned. But like right now, in this exact moment, in this present setting, don't worry too much about that. But okay, then we've got Super Pony here. Can't wait till we draft Klubnik. Tired of this BS. Yeah. So Super Pony also. Who else did he mention? Drew Aller from Penn State.
Yeah.
Look, man, I like Drew. I like Drew Aller. I do. But here's the thing, Super Pony. They literally said that even if Richardson struggles, this is paraphrasing a little bit, but even if he sucks this year, they're not going to give up on him. Now, will they take his 5th-year option? Who knows? But they're going to give him that 4th year. So really, this is kind of a year where Richardson, it's not like he can't go. He has to go out there and do something, right? If he sucks, it's going to be really rough considering what they're going to have to do with him in the 4th year. But I mean, tell me what you think. No, this is pretty much a year for Richardson where it's like, hey, let's see what you got. You got 1 more year, and then maybe next year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's got to be this year. I mean, I know what Chris Ballard said, but Chris Ballard's also on the hot seat himself.
Yes,
and maybe out of here, if he's not the one calling the shots, then who knows if the next GM wants to give Anthony Richardson another year. So yeah, I mean, we could very well see a disappointing season come to fruition this year and see Chris Ballard exit, and then the Colts will have to make a decision on Anthony Richardson. Then, if they're sitting somewhere with a high enough draft pick and one of these quarterbacks is sitting there, I think it would. You and Andrew Moore always talk about roster malpractice. I think it would be roster malpractice if you didn't take a shot on another quarterback if you're in a position to do so after this year and you still don't have the answer on Anthony Richardson.
I like that. Sometimes you got to have a grim reality. So 2 things. We will get to something Steichen said about the starting QB situation later on there, Deshaun. And then Andrew, who else? We got Tina. Guys, I'm just going to go ahead and quell this. If Riley Leonard starts, okay, first off, 2 scenarios. If he's starting during the regular season at any point, Noah even mentioned this, you're pretty much assuming that there's people that are going to get fired. Okay. Number 2 is if he went, let's just say in a crazy world, he won the QB competition. That's really bad. All right. I'm not saying that Riley Leonard is a bad quarterback, but he's just not a starter. He's not a starter. So, we'll see what happens. He is a QB3. I think he's going to beat out Bean for that position. But let's just say this about Riley Leonard. He'll probably be on the roster. He's a Sam Ehlinger replacement. So
yeah. And when Sam Ehlinger got starting reps, that was a bad sign for the Colts too. That's the year that Marcus Brady got fired, and then Frank Reich got fired, and then Jeff Saturday got brought in. So we don't want to see QB3 getting any first team snaps. That usually spells disaster for everything else going on with the organization.
Yeah. So this next one here, big deal. It goes right back to the quarterback, situation we're dealing with, and that is that Richardson was better than Jones, but not by much. So just before we even dive into it, just the whole training camp, we've talked about Jones potentially being the starter, but he's not really separated himself at any point from AR outside of when Richardson was dealing with the shoulder soreness and he couldn't play. And we were like, well, he's not playing, so Jones is getting an advantage, just like he did in the preseason where Richardson goes out with the pinky. What are your thoughts on both of these guys as training camps, just all around? We can dive into this one specifically, but just what's your overall feel from both guys here? And do you have a guy that you think is the front runner in this race?
Yeah. I think it's funny that you bring up the shoulder injury and then the dislocated finger. I feel like really, I mean, this is the only time that I've actually thought this, but when you were saying that, was I feel like the only time Daniel Jones has made any progress on the QB battle and winning that battle has been when Richardson's been injured. I think every time that they've both been healthy, it seems like Richardson's, I mean, he's not taking it by storm, but he's like slowly inching away day after day and kind of outperforming or at least performing well enough that he's not being left behind. And then once he goes out with that injury in the Ravens game, it's back down. Jones goes out there and he doesn't perform great, but I think he has an average game out there. Daniel Jones did. And I think that was enough just because of just the error that was on Anthony Richardson that knocked him out of the game. I think put him ahead in the shaking order. So yeah, we mentioned that comment that Shane Steichen had about how this joint practice and this preseason game is going to go a long way to determining who QB1 is. If that's the case, that's a good sign for Anthony Richardson today. Cause I think this was an opportunity. It's rough because I feel like both of these guys and Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, what we knew about them when they came into training camp, we know the exact same things about them. Yeah. We know Anthony Richardson has trouble staying healthy. He's inconsistent in the short game. He loves throwing it deep, and those explosive plays are really fun. That's been true all through training camp, and nothing's really changed there. And then Daniel Jones is a guy who's not going to be prone to taking those explosive shots, but should be pretty consistent in that short and intermediate game, and that's what he's been. You just have these days kind of from Daniel Jones where he's inconsistent in the short and intermediate game, and really neither of these guys was consistent in getting this offense going. And I mean, that just helps Anthony Richardson a little bit more because Anthony Richardson can give you that inconsistency on short and medium and then give you the explosiveness on the deep ball. So yeah, I feel like it's gone nowhere. Like it wasn't a waste of time to have this quarterback battle, but I feel like there's no clarification that we didn't already have when training camp started. We still have these two preseason games to go through, and hopefully Richardson gets some extended amount of time. What you really don't want to see is Anthony Richardson perform really well and then go out with a minor injury, and then Daniel Jones comes back in, and then it just kind of resets the battle again. I'm tired of that, and I want to see them both healthy and go out there. I think when they're both healthy, you're going to see Anthony Richardson come out on top. I don't think Daniel Jones has done enough to prove that that's going to shake anything up. But man, if you can't stay on the field, you have to play the other guy. That's just how it is. So I'm glad that the Colts have Daniel Jones as insurance. I think there's some other guys that could have been used as insurance that would give you similar production. But yeah, I think it's probably, I don't know if I had to call a starter today, it's probably Daniel Jones, just because we haven't seen Anthony Richardson really any preseason action more than a series and a half. But I expect at the end of the preseason, as long as Richardson doesn't deal with any other injury hiccups, I expect that to be the starter in week 1.
Well, and that's exactly what, you want if you're Indianapolis. Okay. Like, look, we've said this ad nauseum. We've said a lot of things ad nauseum, but it's needed. They might have signed Daniel Jones to a lucrative 1-year deal for it. Backup, very lucrative. But that's because they really wanted to, number one, they wanted to tell Richardson, look, we just spent a crap ton of money. And when you sign a 1-year deal, it takes completely out of your cap. Okay. So we're talking about $14 million, 13.5 guaranteed. Okay. So they were not messing around at all when they brought in Daniel Jones. So they were telling Richardson, look, we'll pay money to make sure you're the guy. Number two, Daniel Jones's career fell apart to the point where the Giants, after giving the guy a $40 million a year contract, completely undeserved, they said, you know what, just get out of here. They'd say there was a point where the Giants were like, we don't even care what happens with you anymore. Just leave. So he was given a second wind type of chance to earn a starting position, and he chose the Colts over the Vikings, over a dude in J.J. McCarthy who hadn't even played. So that told Richardson a lot. So the fact that Richardson, everyone's talking about Jones not running away with this yet.
Yeah.
Richardson hasn't either, like you said. And you do have to address the elephant in the room. Steichen and Ballard's jobs are probably on the line. And while Carly Ursay, Kalen Jackson, and Casey Foyt, they're all wonderful, wonderful ladies. Okay, they're great. They're going to be great owners. They also are probably walking in here. I think Noah said something about this. They're probably like, look, it might be our dad's legacy that we're going to lead with here, but we also want to win. we want to be the best. And Ballard has been here, honestly, I think as long as he has because of Jim Irsay's kindness.
Yeah.
Because there's owners in this NFL that would have been like, get the hell out of here after like the 4th year of the 3rd different quarterback since Luck retired. So we'll see what happens there. But man, I do think there is an element of Steichen saying if he really felt like Jones could lead the offense better and be more efficient, even though he's just so boring of a quarterback, he might go with that. People just think that they're going to go with Richardson. Look, money and jobs and livelihoods are on the line here, people. So if you were in that position and you felt like Richardson was just a little bit off, but Jones just had a little more consistency, it'd be hard not to go with Daniel Jones, which is crazy. So,
do you want to drive your Honda Accord, or do you want to take out your Lamborghini with the bald tires? It's risky doing the one, but you know what you're getting with Daniel Jones.
Yeah. So before we kind of move on here, I actually did want to just address how they did during the practice with Jake Arthur, our own Jake Arthur's camp notes here. Patrick Rye, CFO, Chief Financial Officer of the Horseshoe Huddle, dropping down a super chat. Thank you so much, Patrick. You're a legend. If Jones is the starter week 1, is that even a little bit? Ballard and Steichen tossing in the towel on theirs and AR's time in Indy. And I'll let Noah respond to this too. I think that with them drafting Richardson and it definitely not panning out like they thought it would, they've put themselves in an incredibly awkward position here because they need results now. But you also heard that Richardson still has a year left to prove himself, and then he's got next year that's the be all end all. But like Noah said, if Richardson sucks, and let's say, God forbid, Daniel Jones, even if he's a little better, also can't get you a winning record, you have to draft a quarterback. You absolutely have to draft a quarterback in some round, preferably in days 1 or 2. So they while they need to get the best guy out there, they also need to see what they have with Richardson. You got guys like Dan Dockich out there screaming from the top of his delusional hill that, start Richardson. It's like, well, you're not a GM or a coach with their asses on the line here, Dan, so it's a really weird spot to be in. Honestly, I don't know, Patrick. I don't know the answer to that question. Noah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine them throwing in the towel week 1. And I think if Daniel Jones is the starter, it's because Shane Steichen made that decision. I don't think Chris Ballard's the guy that's going to overstep as head coach and demand that Anthony Richardson plays. Actually, based on the comments of how they should have sat him from the beginning and they're willing to give him another year after this, I think Ballard maybe is on the side of it's okay if Anthony Richardson sits. So I don't think he's going to push that. If Shane Steichen goes with Daniel Jones, it's legitimately because he thinks that will save his job. Not that it will cost him his job. So, is it throwing in the towel? I think, man, it's definitely damning for both of them, more so probably Chris Ballard than Shane Steichen. If Anthony Richardson's not able to beat out Daniel Jones for that starting job. So maybe it's not them throwing in the towel, but I think it is an indication of just the misevaluation that it was to take Anthony Richardson with that 4th overall pick and expect what they expected out of him so early. But yeah, if Jones is trotting out there as the starter week 1, I think there is a genuine belief within the organization that they're more likely to win that week 1 game with Daniel Jones. Whether I agree with that is a different question, but we've got a couple preseason games to kind of figure out how that should turn out.
Yeah, and one last thing is, you might have this absolutely explosive weapon in Richardson, but look, if Shane Steichen said, you know what, Richardson's not the better quarterback, but let's get him out there. That makes absolutely no sense in the world. Okay, so it's going to be who Steichen, like Noah said. It's not what fans want to hear, but it's what anyone in his position would do. If you think that Richardson is going to save your job and he's the better quarterback, you're going to go with him. Whereas if you think Jones is going to save your job and you feel like he's the better quarterback, you're going to go with him. But it's going to be about saving your job. So that's what Steichen's going to lead with, regardless of who he picks. So just keep that in mind, everybody. It's not about seeing what they have; it's about seeing who's going to save who. So, but just to kind of go off of today's notes, so we'll start with Daniel Jones. I'll just rip this off like a Band-Aid. Jones was 13 to 16 passing, but 2 of those 3 incompletions were interceptions. The first interception wasn't Jones's fault, as he hit A.D. Mitchell, which we'll get to later, well well on a cross over the middle, but the ball bounced out of Mitchell's hands and into the grasp of Packers cornerback Kayshawn Nixon. The second interception was definitely on Jones during his final attempt at a 2-minute drill as he threw it directly to Packers linebacker Isaiah Simmons. Jones's completions went to Downs 3, Doolin 3, Pittman Jr. 2, Mitchell 2, Mallory 2. Will Mallory's still making plays. And Laquan Treadwell. So then we'll go to Richardson, and I'll just kind of make a synopsis of this one because Jake put an absolute tower of a paragraph. Richardson had a rougher go of it than Jones, although he threw one interception compared to Jones's 2. Richardson's pick went right over the middle as an easy grab for Packers cornerback Jonathan Baldwin. Noah, what have we said? Richardson's issue is he sails passes over freaking heads. And who did he do this with last year? Green Bay Packers had a 3-pick game. Overall, Richardson was 9 of 20 with completions to Pittman 3, Taylor 2, Giddens, Mitchell, Gould, and Warren. Look, man, neither quarterback blew the other out of the water.
Yeah.
I do think if you could have assessed this, Richardson had the better day because he didn't turn it over as often. But that's not the most encouraging stat line. Like anytime a quarterback is like 55% or less, especially in training camp, even if it's a joint practice, that's not what you want to see. That's not what you want to see. So what are your thoughts on both of these guys today? It wasn't exactly their best performances. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I think both of the completion percentages, once again, I feel like this has been a theme throughout training camp, is drops have hurt them also. I know there was a beautiful fade pass to Michael Pittman about 20 yards down the left side of the field that hit Pittman right in the hands and fell to the floor. So, that's kind of been a theme. I don't know if I expect that to carry over into the regular season. It's just something you have to keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers. And then Anthony Richardson was able to hit those deep balls, right? The Anthony Gould deep ball that he hit. But I mean, it's just inconsistent where he's sailing some flat routes over to the running back over their heads and some 10-yard ins over the heads of defenders, which is super dangerous in the middle of the field to be throwing it high. I mean, it's just like we said before, I mean, we haven't learned anything about Anthony Richardson that we didn't already know about Anthony Richardson. He's capable of those deep balls and really hitting on those big plays. And then you just can't trust that he's not going to spray it when it's into that short and intermediate range.
Yeah. So that's enough on the quarterbacks. We have plenty of time for them throughout the entire season, ladies and gentlemen. But this next one's really good. I just continue to be very impressed by this defender, and that's just Leatu Latu. It is wildly encouraging that the guy that you took 15th overall just a couple drafts ago as the first defender off the board is building off of what I think is a better rookie season than his numbers indicate. This is awesome. Because Noah, we've talked about, Latu's got to really shine this season. And, after I've interviewed Lou Anarumo, asked him a couple questions, he's a pretty insightful guy. He actually gives you quite a bit to work with. He's not as much of a coach speak guy as some of the other people, but he would bring up Latu without anyone even asking about him. What are your thoughts on Latu's training camp? I mean, I think he's looked incredible. And do you think that this is something that he could take into the regular season? Because if he can take the momentum he's built in training camp into meaningful games, you might have your number one defensive edge on your roster.
Yeah, that's what you're looking for. And I don't think we need to spend a ton of time here on Latu and his performance today. It's definitely encouraging because you want to see him go against the ones of an opposing team and beat them in those one-on-ones. And he was able to do that and provide consistent pressure. But I mean, that's not unique to this training camp practice. He's been doing that all training camp. Latu is really showing that he's taken that next step and talking about the work that he's been putting in to be able to finish these plays and turn these pressures into hits and these hits into sacks and really just up the production that he's getting from the edge spot. And it comes at a good time, right? When you're talking about Samson Ebukam and that back injury that he went out with, you don't know how serious that is. When you're talking about just pure rushers, it's those two. So you want to have somebody who can really come in on those third downs. He's probably going to be playing a lot more than third downs, but being on those third downs and be an effective pass rusher consistently, maybe get up there in the double digits for sacks. We mentioned Ebukam with his 9.5 sacks, I think you said, in 2023. If he even has 9.5 and is just misses out on double digits, but provides that kind of pressure that Ebukam was able to in 2023. That's a huge win. And I would expect him to keep on building on that throughout his career. So yeah, just super pleased with the performance and everything we've heard about Latu. We haven't really heard of any down days from him or days where he's disappeared or anything where he's getting stonewalled by any of the offensive tackles, either on the Ravens or now on the Packers. So yeah, hopefully we can see him for a brief amount of time. And remember, preseason at this point for the Colts, health is more important than performance right now. So maybe just put him in for a couple series at the beginning of the game for the Colts versus Packers game coming up on Saturday, and see how he performs against the offensive tackles in that setting, because you want to see that in live action, obviously, as much as possible. But no, excited about going into the season about what we're going to get from Latu.
Yeah, and again, like, we can just put a bow on it. This is what you've wanted to see before training camp started. This is what you wanted to see, and he's doing it. So That's all he can do, and that's very promising. So the next one here is, so this is a guy that a lot of people were out on in his rookie season, and it was bad. It wasn't a good rookie season at all. But A.D. Mitchell here, he keeps winning. He had where he won big in the joint practice was the one-on-ones. And Mitchell even said during one of our press conferences with him that, if someone leaves me on an island with somebody, that's not going to be good. It's not going to be for me. It's not going to be me that's not going to have it good. Like, he's starting to build that confidence now, but also, people mention that, but also like Noah had mentioned before, Mitchell's never lacked confidence, and he's never shied away from telling you how good he is. So, but this is actually Jake Arthur's synopsis on A.D. Mitchell's day. This wasn't the greatest day for Mitchell, who's been having a red-hot last couple of weeks in camp. He was doing good for a bit of jawing with the Green Bay secondary, and particularly Nixon, who later intercepted the ball that bounced off of Mitchell's hands. On the next play, the ball was punched out of Mitchell's grasp for a forced fumble. But prior to 11-on-11s, he had a terrific showing in one-on-ones, getting big separation, making difficult grab that he had to adjust to. He had a couple of worthwhile plays during 11-on-11s. Mitchell is the kind of guy that I think that those one-on-ones mean something here. And that's if you go man defense with him, you're going to have to be pinpoint, because he is already good enough to make you look silly. But the issue with Mitchell, it really hasn't been if he's got the capabilities to make a defender look foolish. It's been his hands. It's been his willingness to do the dirty work. And it's just been his willingness to, honestly, I don't want to say throw your body out there to get the catch. Yeah. But throw your body out there to get the catch. The money you're making, the level you're playing on, what's at stake, you cannot dial it back, regardless of your position, regardless of if you're a diva or not, or if you want to keep your earrings in, whatever. A.D. Mitchell, he's overall, though, Noah, he's had a good training camp, but this was a little bit of a weird day for him because he looked great, looked bad. What are your thoughts on A.D. Mitchell, and especially going into the game on Saturday?
Yeah, I think the one-on-ones mean something, and it's good to see him.
It does.
It's good to see him win in those and keep building that confidence. As a young player, really had a rough rookie season, and a lot of bad things said about him over the course of his rookie season. So it's good to see him continue to toast these corners one-on-one and win those matchups. I think he's the best separator on the Colts offense, which is not something you usually say about your wide receiver 4 on any given team. But yeah, like you mentioned, the 11-on-11 is where you want to see him thrive, and you want to see him do well in these live action or the live drill or live reps that he's going to get in the preseason games coming up, because that's what's really separating him in terms of playing time from guys like Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce on this team. Is Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman are both good off the ball. They're good when they're not being targeted. They're good at running their routes consistently. They're good at blocking. They're putting in that work. A.D. Mitchell needs to do that and prove that he can do that consistently to get on the field in order to get himself enough opportunities to take advantage of that great athleticism that he has and his ability to separate, and the hands that hopefully show a little bit of improvement this year. But yeah, it's good. We've talked a lot about some of these stacked position groups. This podcast, and wide receiver is another one of them where you don't really need AD Mitchell to go out there and be your star guy. Maybe you do now with Josh Downs and Alec Pierce nursing some injuries. So he'll get that opportunity in these next two training camp or the preseason games to go out there and show that. But yeah, once the preseason rolls around, I think just kind of acclimating him into this offense or putting him into this offense slowly and letting him work his way into more reps and more opportunities to see more targets. Just keep building off the momentum that he's really put together this training camp. And I think that's going to be good for him.
Yeah. And, one last thing is look, about AD Mitchell, we've been critical on him, but the kid, he has so much to work with to put pressure on defensive backs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. And he's shown it. If you leave him in a one-on-one situation with a defensive back, he might be lankier, but he's big enough to make you work for a high ball. Mm-hmm. And he's also fast enough and he's good enough at his cuts that he can just absolutely make you look stupid. So there's just so much there for Mitchell. And if he can just get those fundamentals down, get the rapport down with his quarterback, and just honestly get a little dirtier. Guys like Pittman, even Downs to a degree, but Pierce, man, those guys don't shy away from dirty work. Tyler Warren, I can assure you, won't shy away from dirty work. Right now, AD Mitchell is the diva of the wide receiver group. So, if he wants to shatter that designation, then play harder. So we'll have to see. His efficiency is going to be everything here for his future going on in Indianapolis. But this next one here, we're just going to kind of dive into these. I had a piece where I mentioned 5 guys to watch for against the Packers, but we're going to look for what we're watching for. Noah, I'll let you start with this. There's so many position groups that are going to be playing. Steichen mentioned starters will be playing to a degree, and Anthony Richardson's going to see a lot of action in the first half.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Is there anything that might take top of mind or that might be in a hierarchy chain that's the number one thing that you need to see?
Obviously, quarterback's going to be something you're watching, especially with Anthony Richardson. I'll leave that because we all know we're watching the quarterbacks and we want to see Anthony Richardson do things he hasn't done well in the past, and we want Daniel Jones to do things he hasn't done well in the past. Obviously, That's going to be good. But that position group that I'm watching is the one that's been taken over by injuries with Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, Kenny Moore, Justin Wally all going down. 4 of your top 5 corners not playing. So Charvarius Ward, I don't want to see a lot of him in this game. I know Shane Steichen said starters are going to play, but man, if you lose 5 of your 5 top corners, you have an unplayable group at that point. So don't risk too much with Charvarius Ward. Let some of these other guys get these reps on the outside. I want to see guys like Sam Womack in this new scheme play consistently. Alex Johnson, we officially went on Alex Johnson watch as of last podcast. This is the time we're actually going to get to watch him. I imagine with Kenny Moore out, he's going to get the start in the slot, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him take some outside reps as well. Jonathan Edwards, the undrafted free agent, going out there playing on the outside, who I don't think has played as well as Alex Johnson has, but I think has shown some things. I want to see him play. But yeah, I'm officially on this DB watch to watch these depth guys to see who's going to be able to step in and take some of these roles. Because we still haven't gotten any updates on how long we think Juju Brents, Jalen Jones are going to be out. We know Justin Wally's out for the year. Kenny Moore will likely be back for week 1, but man, that still leaves one starting spot open on the outside, and then your 4th and 5th corners are still up there, up for grabs. So yeah, those are the names that I'm going to be watching in the DB room.
Yeah, that's very fair. For me, it is that offensive line now.
Yeah.
I didn't have that in my notes here in my piece about the 5 Colts to watch. I didn't have any offensive linemen, but after the joint practice, this was obviously written on the 13th. So, yeah. But now you're looking at the offensive line. So that's number one. First team, second team, doesn't matter. You got to play better than you did today. You do have complete and utter uncertainty at quarterback. You can't leave whoever is there, in a position where they're going to struggle or get hit or get pressured. Mm-hmm. Look at what happened with Richardson. I know it was on him to not make that play call, but you just can't afford any pressure on your quarterback. So that's number one. Just kind of rip these off. For Anthony Richardson Sr., man, just stay on the damn field.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of reps. I don't want to see him get hurt again. Okay. He just seems to be a guy that it's just happening from the top of his head down to the base of his feet. He just something gets hurt every time. So Richardson needs to show he can stay on the field. For Alex Johnson, man, he has got a golden opportunity to use momentum here. He had a great game against the Ravens. So keep on going, Alex Johnson, because he's making a name for himself in a completely decimated room. Another guy is Ulysses Bentley IV.
Yeah,
I put him on the list because he had the most effective game of any running back. He outperformed DJ Giddens. He had 7 carries for 35 yards. He looked good. One of those was a 10-yard. His biggest was a 10-yard, carry, which means he had 6 carries for 25 yards outside of that 7th.
Yeah.
So that's a guy to look for. I know it's – go ahead.
Yeah, that's with the Salvin Ahmed injury and Khalil Herbert missing some time right now. He's going to get in the game quite a bit earlier than he did last preseason game. So, yeah, this is a good opportunity for him.
Yeah, another guy, last 2 here, Hunter Wohler, led the team in tackles against the Ravens, had 9. He's looked great in training camp. Keep an eye on him. He's basically secured himself a roster spot. At least right now, he's going to make that 53-man roster. And then last, of course, is Joe Bacci. I mean, this is probably the biggest surprise of training camp. He looks like a starter. I mean, he looks like a guy that is literally going to stand right next to Zaire Franklin. There's times where he had the green dot in Cincy. So those are my guys that I'm watching for. Is there anybody that I didn't list? Is there anybody that is an underdog or overlooked that you're like, I want to see this guy and what he's going to do on the field Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here and name back at the roster guys that I want to watch all day. But, yeah, Joe Bacci, I'm glad you threw his name out there. I was definitely going to say, let's see if he can do it again. See if he can put together another strong game in pass coverage to prove that he can be that guy opposite Zaire Franklin when week 1 comes around. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the guys on the interior of the defensive line to watch them and see how that depth shakes out. Backup nose tackle behind Grover. You've got Eric Johnson, Tim Smith, Josh Tupou that are kind of all battling it out for that spot. We'll see if anyone proves themselves worthy enough to make the roster. And I want to see Adetomiwa Adebawore, Neville Gallimore continue to do well. I think Adebawore has really shown some progression from where he was at last year in terms of his ability to I mean, he was a good pass rusher last year, but I think he's shown a little bit more juice this year. Want to see him continue to develop as a run defender as well. And then, I'm not super excited to watch Blake Freeland, but I want to see if it's as bad as it was last week, right? Because I think swing tackle is somewhere you're still worried about. Also going to be watching Jalen Travis. Maybe he's tackle 3 at this point. If you don't trust Blake Freeland enough, if somebody goes down, you bring in Jalen Travis. I know it's super early. That's not an ideal place that you want to throw your 4th-round rookie into into any starting time at offensive tackle. We've talked about that in many episodes, how you just don't want to throw those guys in early. It's a rough spot to be in for a rookie.
Remember how that went?
Yeah, I mean, Bernard Ryman, even when he played as a rookie, looked really rough. So, it's not easy to get thrown in there as a tackle. Hope we don't have to see that from Jalen Travis, but I do want to see him in this preseason game to see how well he does. And then, I mean, receivers, I think it's pretty well locked up, but I want to see A.D. Mitchell perform well in a team setting and not just in these one-on-ones. The one-on-ones are great. Awesome to see him build that confidence like we mentioned, but want to see him do it in a live game here.
Yeah, I mean, hey, those are all very valid points. So we'll go ahead and get to the Colts news and rumors here. We do have 3 things to highlight. Number 1 is we already kind of mentioned it, but it's given what's going on with Downs, given what's going on with Pierce, this is a little bit of a more significant injury now, but it's DJ Montgomery goes to IR. DJ Montgomery didn't play last year, but he played the year before. He had a game, I believe it was against the Steelers, caught 3 passes, had a touchdown reception. This is a guy that's a gamer for the Colts. He's going to do what you ask him. That does have significance. Again, due to the injuries, this was kind of a guy that if those guys miss time, I mean, you're looking at DJ Montgomery to take some snaps, and now it looks like if he had to, he wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, it's someone that they've trusted and someone that has been on the practice squad lately. I don't know if they would have gone him and Laquan Treadwell on the practice squad again. These are both vested veteran guys that are getting up there in age. And maybe you want to keep somebody on the roster that maybe has a little bit more of a ceiling that is left to be explored. I think kind of what you have in Laquan Treadwell and DJ Montgomery is what you're going to have, which is, as the Colts see it, I think someone that you can reliably throw in there and take some snaps if you ever have the need for it to be. And I think that could have been the case. But yeah, DJ Montgomery's season is over. I think that does open up some room on the practice squad for one of these other guys. We mentioned all those undrafted free agents that are out there and willing to take that spot. So Coleman Owen, I think, has the lead in the clubhouse right now for that other practice squad spot if they end up going with 2 receivers. But rough for DJ Montgomery. I know been a practice squad guy the last couple of years, and like we mentioned, getting up there in age, it sucks to lose out on a season like this. Maybe they come to an injury settlement at some point and he's able to explore the market somewhere else. But but good opportunity for these undrafted guys.
Yeah, and so what they did with this is they signed defensive end Marcus Haynes. Now, I wrote this breaking news piece on Wednesday, and I'm telling you, man, I was like, am I searching for the right guy? No stats on the guy. But he has been a guy who has literally, like a pinball, he's just bounced around the league, waived, released, signed, waived, released, signed. So, I think that the Colts, this is literally, guys, a camp body. That is a very loaded defensive edge room. I don't even know if you really have to go into much, Noah, but this is a guy that I fully expect. It's brutal to say this, but it's true. He's probably not going to be on the team very long.
Yeah. I mean, you've got it's tough. Desmond Little, Darrell Nchami, some of these other guys. I mean, even Isaiah Land, if he ends up getting cut, some of these back end of the roster guys there at defensive end. So it's a crowded room when you're talking roster spots. And then I think for competition as practice squad, it's crowded as well. But fun to see him bring in a guy with. I think this will be his 5th NFL team in 2 years. He was an undrafted free agent out of Old Dominion of all schools. Then I think played in the UFL for a little bit. So I mean, he's keeping the dream alive. Good to see him bring him in. He's facing an uphill battle for either a practice squad spot, not to mention a roster spot.
Yeah, and so we'll get to the last thing here. So Shane Steichen said, and I quote, on the quarterback competition, I don't have an exact timetable on it, but sooner rather than later would be nice. That is like finding gold with Shane Steichen. The guy gives you absolutely nothing. Yeah. Okay, so for him to say sooner rather than later would be nice, that tells me that he's not going to outright say it. That tells me that they really do not have, even in their own judgment, a guy who's substantially ahead of the other. I think that today and Saturday's preseason game, man, they're literally looking at these 2 instances like we got to see who's going to perform because we got to see who we actually are going to put a leg up over the other.
Yeah. It sounds to me like somebody who's just as frustrated as all the fans are that nobody's taken a hold on the position and really run away with it. Like we mentioned, Daniel Jones hasn't done enough to run away with it. The only time he's really making progress is when Anthony Richardson's hurting himself. So it's a difficult spot to be in. I'm sure that's frustrating. Obviously, I think a head coach who's calling offensive plays wants to know as soon as possible who he's calling plays for, because I think it does drastically change your game plan. I know Daniel Jones can do some things in the run game, but not the same way that Anthony Richardson's going to, and he's not going to take those deep shots like Anthony Richardson is, but he's maybe going to be a little bit more consistent on those crossing routes and the short and intermediate throws. So I think it's a drastically different game plan depending on who you go with. He definitely wants to know sooner rather than later, and I think he's in the same boat with everybody who's been watching this competition throughout training camp.
Yeah, guys, I know that there might be some shade thrown out there on Shane Steichen, but he wanted Richardson as his quarterback, but I don't think Ballard, QB coaches, Steichen could have imagined that going into year 3 of Richardson, this is what they'd have to do. Yep. So, but guys, that's the end of our show. Do not forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI on X. We are at Colts_SI. Subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click the bell to turn on the notifications. If you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, Noah has us covered. Uploading it to Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. So, everyone, we will be back on Monday pretty much just breaking down what we saw from the preseason game. And then, of course, you've got the Bengals preseason game next Saturday. Mm-hmm. And then September 7th is going to roll around, Noah. We're going to be talking about real football. Yep. So, guys, it's not far away. The time is shrinking. And the pressure is on for Shane Steichen to pick the right guy. So until then, everyone, enjoy your Thursday, enjoy your Friday, have a great weekend, and we'll be catching you all again right here on Monday night. Take care.